All right, welcome back to Raising Real Estate Standards. I have a very special guest with us today, Miss Lori Edwards from RE/MAX United in Raleigh. First of all, Lori has been an avid listener of ours, and I appreciate that so much. You don't realize when you get into the podcasting world or do this stuff, and you don't know if anybody's even listening to you. You're just like, let's just put this stuff out there and see what happens. And Lori was one of the first people that came to us and said, guys, I really love what y'all are doing. So thank you so much. But Lori's a friend of ours. She works as the one of the broker in charges with the RE/MAX United community over in Raleigh. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Lori.
Well, I am originally I was a teacher. I graduated from Appalachian State here in North Carolina and still a diehard mountaineer. And I taught elementary school originally in my career, and then stepped back with my children as they were born and worked in the nonprofit fundraising sphere for a while, which teaching translated to that very well. And then got into real estate on the advice of a RE/MAX broker in charge about 11 years ago now.
Very cool. So we have a lot of listeners out there that have either transitioned over to real estate or are getting ready to transition over to real estate. And being a teacher prior to, and then getting into real estate as an agent, owning your own business, that's a big change. Tell us a little bit about that.
It is a big change. And the business piece is probably the hardest piece. So I'll start first. The things that I already possessed as a teacher that really helped me in real estate were process management. One of the things in teaching, if you do not set up your classroom with great classroom management, that classroom is not going to function well throughout the course of the 9-10 months ahead.
Right.
So process management, classroom management translates into some of my business management practices just in terms of managing a transaction, kind of managing a client. I hate to say I'm managing a client, but there's a way that I teach them that I operate this way, and this is how you can operate well within my system. Communication is important. Being a teacher, you have a lot of tough conversations. So having tough conversations was not new to me, so that really helped. Education, obviously. I have a teacher's heart. A friend just said that to me recently. She's still a public school teacher, and she said, wow, as I was explaining something that I did in real estate, and she said, you really do have that teacher's heart. So educating clients is very important to me, just in terms of what the process looks like in buying or selling real estate, what the market looks like in our area, what challenges we might come across, what challenges we might not. I like to be as proactive as possible. I can't account for every scenario, but the more proactive I can be, the better the transaction goes, the better the relationship and the trust are managed in the transaction. So, something else that I find as a teacher, teachers are also lifelong learners for the most part. So this business has changed drastically just in 11 years. And so constantly learning, constantly seeking new information, new processes. How can I make just slight improvements to be a better steward to my clients and to make my life function a little smoother while I serve other people?
So let me ask you this too, because so if there was ever two places I would imagine would be totally different than real estate sales, it would be teaching and nonprofit fundraising. So what are some things you've taken from that realm to over to your business?
Oh, wow. So nonprofit fundraising, I worked with two very large organizations in the Raleigh community, one more as a volunteer, one more in a supportive role for fundraising, a very large annual campaign that they run. And nonprofit fundraising is so similar to real estate, actually, because you have donors that you're appealing to, you're trying to attract to your organization, and then you are appreciating those donors, much as we do appreciation events in real estate. So managing your database is almost identical, really, in terms of a lot of the things I learned in nonprofit fund development, and they translate almost perfectly over to running what I do, which is a sphere-based business.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and I want to get to that in a minute, but tell us a little bit about like the market. We don't really talk about specifics a lot on the podcast, but you're in the Raleigh market. It's a crazy market.
Wow, yeah. So Raleigh is in an area of North Carolina called the Triangle. That triangle includes three cities: Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. We are a very large market in terms of the counties that real estate agents in the Raleigh-Durham area cover. And Raleigh and Durham are two different cities for those outside of North Carolina. Our market, between Raleigh and Durham, they are the number 2 and number 4 hottest markets in the country,
Wow.
based on U.S. News and World Report. That came out this past February. We are, I believe I heard yesterday, we're one of the 3 fastest growing counties in the country. We are in the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill area. We have 3 major universities: University of North Carolina, UNC, North Carolina State, and Duke. And those drive a lot of business interest in our area. And so that means we have major corporations coming in, hiring these quality grads. 46%, I believe, of folks living in the Triangle over 25 have bachelor's degrees. So it's a highly educated area. And there's still land to build in some places. So it's just kind of the center of the universe for
Right.
North Carolina right now. But it's a very hot market. It's a very challenging market in that each sub-market is a little different. And so what goes on in Raleigh may be a little different than what goes on in Durham, what goes on in the next county over, in a development in another county. So we have to constantly stay on top of the data in our market.
So when you're saying that, like, you work in different markets, so to say, so some of the people out there, let's say somebody in a bigger city, they may even chop that city up into areas, and then like where we're at, we have Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and then we have surrounding counties as well. How is it going back and forth, through those different markets that you're working with?
It can be a lot. We thankfully have some really good data analysts in our area that that keep us apprised of what's going on in each of those areas on a monthly basis. They share with us data that we can share with our clients. We just have to, when you're pulling comparables, when you're analyzing the market, you just have to really pay attention to that market's demographic. So we work in some rural areas that aren't super rural, but they're smaller towns just outside of Raleigh, 30 minutes. I mean, you're not talking a long ways. We have suburban markets that are more subdivision based versus city, based. So it's constantly learning, and it's constantly collaborating with the people who maybe work certain areas more than others. If you've got a buyer or seller in that area, to make sure you are advising them as the expert in that area.
Sure. So you mentioned sphere marketing. Let's tackle that. So,
Okay.
there's different types of marketing. We've talked about it on the podcast before, different types of marketing to lead generate. And Lori really focuses on the sphere marketing. So tell us a little bit about that.
So when I got into real estate, I was lucky. I had belonged to several community. I don't even want to say lucky. I had worked in our community for a long time. So I had a lot of connections within the Raleigh area in terms of places I had volunteered, places I had worked, communities that I belonged to and didn't just belong to, but participated in. And so when I learned about sphere-based marketing, that seemed to work so much better for me. I can cold calling people. I barely do a good job of calling my own parents, and they will laugh at that. And so cold calling just did not appeal to me. And buying leads, and thankfully I joined a firm that was like, don't go buy these leads. And so sphere-based was picking up and looking at all the people that I know, all the people that I've helped in various ways, that I've advised, even just on paint colors, because I painted my dining room that color. So who are these people that already know, like, and trust me, and know that when I say something, I'm not just making it up, or I'm not just coming up with it on the fly, that I have really understood it. So, and a lot of almost all of my business comes from either people I know, like, and trust, or people they know, like, and trust. And it's just really staying in front of them and sharing with them what I know, not just in real estate, but what I know about our area and our state.
Right. So it's just more comfortable for you to work with people you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
that's
is.
really what it boils down to. If you're either a cold marketer or you're a sphere marketer, and it comes down to who you're more comfortable with, basically.
Yeah, and they come to me going, oh, my friend who I trust trusts you. So that they come to me with a different attitude and a different way to function, which I am grateful for.
A lot of changes coming.
Yeah.
A lot of changes coming. And you actually work with John over in your office, and he's actually in the middle of a lot of this stuff. So first of all, before we jump into specifics, just give me your thought on some of the changes that are coming.
Oh Lord, I don't know that I'm qualified to give a thought, but I will say that when I'm fortunate that I was raised with a growth mindset. I was raised with here's a struggle, here's an issue, and what are we going to do about it? Not bury your head in the sand. So that growth mindset, it's a challenge. Like, we have been faced with a new challenge. The recession 11, 12 years ago, that was a challenge. People had to learn a new way of doing things. Right. And that's what we're doing right now. We're learning a new way. And, I have agents come to me all the time, but gosh, that's so much work. Yeah, it's so much work. We get paid to work. And so what I am working on right now, what my thoughts are on the challenge is, how can I automate things? How can I put new processes, again, going back to that, developing processes, how can I put those in effect so that the work is manageable? Yes, it is going to be more work with the commission structure coming out of our MLS.
Yep.
It's just going to be more work, but it's a challenge that in a lot of ways I welcome, because it's going to make me a better professional. The more I learn, the more I put a new process in place, the better professional I'm going to become in this industry.
Yeah, we're talking about the some of the changes that are coming from the NER rules, from the court settlements and all that, basically stating that we're going to be taking the cooperating compensation out of our local MLSs to where basically at the end of the day, buyer's agents aren't really going to be able to know if they're going to get paid by a seller or even how much it's going to be. So it's going to be a challenge. And Mark and I have talked about this, and really it's a communication. We're going to have to learn a different skill. It's almost like take real estate agents out of it, but it's almost like us as human beings have not lost, but we've learned how to communicate differently over the last 20 plus years. And now we're having to relearn a skill of communication to be able to have this conversation, a tough conversation, with these consumers.
So that's a great point, because I think a lot about language, and something I've worked on particularly over the past 6 or 7 years is refining my language. And the language you use matters, and you have to be able to communicate in a way not only that you explain things properly, but that the other person can hear what you're explaining. And that can be tough when you have different communication styles between you and a client, or you and someone that's interested in working with you. And so working on that language and that communication through your language is very important right now, and refining your messaging so that you are confident in delivering, because everybody trusts someone who knows what they know and believes what they believe. And refining language is just, I feel like I'm doing it every day.
Yeah, and you have to have that confidence, because when you're sitting down with somebody and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to charge you, you better have confidence coming to that conversation. Otherwise, it's a negotiation, and I hate to say it, the person on the other side is going to eat you up from that standpoint.
Pretty much.
So are there any strategies that you are talking to your agents about right now, and how we may handle some of this at the first get-go as we're getting started?
Right now, practicing scripts, and I hate to use the word scripts because I don't think you should have a scripted approach to anything. I think you should speak naturally, but the more you practice your language in a script format, the more it becomes natural to you. Knowing your value, like looking back at transactions and going, I saved that deal. That person got that house at that price, and 5 years later, they have great equity because I was the professional in the deal and got them there. Knowing your value is is massive right now. And I will say, coming from a teaching background, it was very hard for me in the first 5 years to recognize my value, primarily because the state of North Carolina doesn't recognize teachers' value through pay. And so it's you don't hire any professional. I hire somebody to cut my hair. I hire somebody to cut my dog's hair.
Right.
And it's expensive, but it's done well.
Right.
So it kind of just knowing your value, getting your language down pat, practicing your scripts, that's what you can be doing right now. And then every time you go out there, reflecting on how could I have done that a little bit better? How did I not convey that message? I've had a few instances right now where people are pulled out of the market because they're confused. I explained it. I'm not sure I didn't confuse them more. I thought I didn't, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't communicate as clearly as I thought I did. And so I'm looking at that going, how can I communicate clearly? How can I change my messaging, my language so that people can hear me and understand what I'm saying?
That's a good point, and we've been bringing that up with our office as well, in the fact that, as we're navigating through this, there's going to be some things we try that work and some things we try that don't work. And there's going to be some other agencies that have agents that are trying things their way that may work or not work. I can't emphasize this enough. We have to have grace with ourselves. We have to have grace with our clients. Our clients need to have grace with us as well. But we also need to have grace with the other agents out there, because we're all trying to navigate this thing at the same time in different ways. We're going to get through it, but it's the nature of the beast,
Right. Well, great. Yeah, grace. Anytime you can offer grace, that's huge.
Absolutely. All right. So I want to switch gears on you.
Okay.
So the market. Specifically, we've been working in an environment of higher interest rates, let's call it, okay? It's slowed down a bit. Your market probably didn't see that much of a difference. We saw some. There's some markets out there that completely stopped. But there was difference. Now you're hearing, hey, we're going to start seeing the interest rates come down a little bit. I heard yesterday there's roughly almost 100% chance that they're going to lower the Fed funds rate in September. I don't know how that's going to affect. I would assume it's going to at least drop the mortgage rate a little bit, but you may already see that drop, factored in. But what are some strategies you're sharing with your agents right now to get through, number one, the high interest rate environment, getting people off the fence, and then what are some things you've thought about coming up with interest rates starting to slow down a little bit? Because unfortunately, in my opinion, I think we're going to enter a time where it's going to open back up again, and we're going to have the challenges of the, 20 multiple offers and the craziness we dealt with, 2 years ago.
So something I did a little Instagram video. I like to do cheesy stuff. Like, I don't know why I like to be cheesy, but it was about getting off the fence. Because right now what I tell my buyers, particularly ones that are sitting on the fence or that are kind of concerned, you can pay the higher interest rate now or you can pay the higher price later. It's if you're renting, that's a black hole. You're putting away money. You're not gaining any equity when you're renting, and you have to have a place to live. So let's balance that out with, I have to have a place to live. So I'm either going to rent it or I'm going to own it. Or if you're lucky enough, like a parent will let you move in to save up. But you have to have a place to live. So you're already spending money on a place to live. So it's kind of looking at the numbers sometimes. I will actually sometimes sit, I'm a data person. I like when you can make things very clear in black and white for people. Run the numbers. What does that rent look like every month? And what after a year have you put in, and what do you have in return? So most of my folks who are committed to buying, there are definitely people who have stepped back from buying more in my market because they can't find what they want to buy, so they can't sell what they have because what they want to buy isn't out there or it's more expensive.
I was going to ask, is it an affordability issue?
Yeah, and it's hard to go from the mortgage payment you have to a new mortgage payment that's $2,000 more. That's money at my point in life that, the folks I work with a lot of times can't travel with or do something significant for their children. And so getting people off the fence is just kind of finding, I'm driving to areas a little further away. So you thought you wanted to be in a central area. Well, that area, you can't get what you want. Or maybe you take a smaller house and build equity in a smaller house because it's in the area you want to be. There's sacrifices, and there's no perfection in this. And really just kind of helping people, figure that out, what their comfort level is. But ultimately, you can only afford what you can afford or what you're willing to spend. And so we have to work within those confines. I mean, I'm going as far as an hour away sometimes just to get people into properties that suit their budget and their lifestyle needs.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from a standpoint of, waiting is probably not the answer. I'm going to say probably. I should probably say it's not the answer, but I'm going to say it's probably not the answer because I've watched people. I watched one specific individual. They lived in a 3,000 square foot house, forced to sell, renting for 2 to 3 years, getting back in the market, and what they were paying for that house before, they are absolutely just, it's unfamiliar territory what they can get for that same price point. Now, they're like, okay, I got to figure this out. Now, unfortunately, it becomes more the waiting game. It becomes the, hey, I'm going to wait some more because what's going to happen? Prices are going to drop. Interest rates are going to come down. This is their opinion, okay? I'm along with you that I just don't think prices are going to drop. But anyway, long point to get to. The waiting game, it's just, you're hearing more and more of this, but it's just not the right thing to do because you're missing the boat. And the more you miss that boat, the more you're throwing that money into that black hole you're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm lucky. I've lived in my personal home for 22 years now. So I have seen what that home has done over 22 years, and it really, I haven't ever lost value. I had already gained it by the time the recession came, and what I lost was still not where. And just look, it's a long game. And I realize not everyone has the long game to play, and that can be where it's a little scarier. But if, recently, I've got clients not far here from Greensboro under contract, and they went a little bit further outside of their location. They are going to be in a great small town with an incredible downtown. It's going to be a really neat place to live, and they were able to kind of some new construction. We're starting to see some houses that sit. Builders don't want to sit on house, and they dropped a little bit, and that enticed my buyers to go, okay, this is good for the price. And it's within a location that gets them close to their jobs. It's not close, but it's not a terrible commute.
Right.
So that it's all relative to your situation, but waiting is definitely not the answer because the prices are going up. People are moving to North Carolina in droves, and it's and I don't blame them. I grew up here, and I'm lucky that I grew up here because it's a beautiful place to live, and people have discovered that. So
it's amazing when you mention they're not somebody moving. They're not super close to work. They're not across the street, but they're not. It's not terrible. I'm sure you've heard this. People coming from Atlanta or New York or some of these other places. They're like, all right, so I want to be within 45 to 60 minutes of my job, and I'm like, dude, you could be within a 4-county territory.
Yeah. Right. We don't have that much traffic.
Right.
But I will say, and that's what we're seeing in our market, is the folks that are local who have lived local for a very long time are struggling with the price increases and the cost of housing. But folks who are coming from areas of the country that cost double what we have. I met with the clients that are moving from Seattle yesterday, and what they can get, they're like, we don't even need all this because they're used to such a high price point on a home. And they're unfortunately driving our market up. It is what it is.
That's right.
And so I can't change that.
Yeah.
So you either play the game or you get left out. And I personally want to own real estate because it's a great investment.
Agreed. Diamond in the rough that people are finally starting to find. All right, I want to switch gears and maybe throw something fun at you. So you're an avid reader, okay? What are some of the good books you've read lately that you could share that may have? I don't even know if you read books that help you in your business or whatnot. But what are some things you could share out there? Some books, because our listeners are always listening for tips and things like that.
Wow, like I narrowed some of them down. I did write them down, so I made sure I got the authors' names correct. But the first book I would start with, and in fact, our book club that I belong to is starting, where I actually really like, they're going to chunk it up with some leadership books 4 times a year. And so we're starting with Atomic Habits by James Clear. And
Nice.
if Atomic Habits is hands down, this is the first book to start with if you want to get your business on track. That book really taught me. In real estate, we're taught to set goals a lot, and I am not a goal-oriented person. Now, I'm not saying I don't have goals or things I want to achieve, but I think I feel like I set myself up for failure sometimes with goals. But building habits and that move the needle a little bit forward every day, that's hugely important to me because I want to look back. And thankfully now I've got a little age on me. I can look back 5 years and go, wow, look how far I've come in 5 years. And it's because I put habits into place every day, just little habits. I mean, just nothing crazy. That I did this every day, be it writing a handwritten letter every day to somebody in my sphere, and what that has netted. Another book that I discovered about a year ago, and I've kind of been combing through it on and off, is called Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. Huh. And so there's a book called Exactly What to Say. This one has been modified for real estate. It's a small black book. You can read like 1 chapter a day. It's like 4 pages with not a lot of words on it. That's the best part. But it goes back to giving you that language. Okay. And I'm going to give you a big secret. That language works on spouses also.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just a real estate book, but it's one of the language pieces. It says, like I might say to a client, how certain are you? Right. How certain are you if we list at this higher price, the house is going to sell? So that book has been a great book in terms of just helping me refine my language so that people can hear what I'm trying to say, and so that I can really appeal to them. Another book, Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. That's a good one. That it's kind of in the same vein as Atomic Habits, but we read that with a group in our office, and I really enjoyed that one. But ultimately, I do a lot of work in terms of reading with a personality typing system called the Enneagram, and that is I do a lot of reading in that space because learning about myself as a person and learning about how other people view the world has really helped me not always try to impose my ways of doing things, but go, oh, wait a minute, they see it from this lens. I need to work from that lens and not from my own personal lens. So working with Enneagram books and Enneagram studies, I've done a lot of work with
those.
That.
Are very interesting, and so this is not scripted at all. So it's interesting. I didn't realize you were reading that because I've read those as well, and very, very interesting. And you've heard us talk about DISC and things like that on this show, where personality profiles are huge, but Enneagram, it goes into so much more depth.
Right.
It's amazing. But all right, so those are awesome, and we're going to get those in our show notes as well. That way, everybody's got a copy of the titles, authors. That way you can find those for yourself. But one last thing, if you can leave one last thing for our listeners, you as the teacher of real estate, Lori, what would that be?
One last thing, slow down. And maybe that's because I spin you can tell I talk very fast, and my entire orbit spins very fast. That's just kind of the way I'm wired. And slow down. The process gets tricky, slow down. You don't have to have all the answers. Slow down and find solutions. Anytime you can slow the process down, slow yourself down, I feel like you can gain more clarity and serve your clients better.
Such wisdom coming from you. Wonderful, wonderful. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us, Lori.
Sure.
Thank you for coming over here and meeting with us, even though you're from Raleigh. Sure. Guys, reach out to Lori if you're even if you've got somebody that you may have looking in that area. Reach out to her. But thank you again. We appreciate you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.